So before I start posting videos and a series about my journey with CPS and the family court system, I just wanted to take this opportunity to post my first video and let everybody know a little bit about myself um, and kind of what's led to me being an advocate for not only my own kids but other children as well. Um, a little over a year ago, I found myself in a situation where I tried to avoid CPS involvement, um, and I was not successful. It was ordered that they get involved, and I will do a series detailing that journey, that story. I will share as many details as I can, um, but the goal of my videos is to bring awareness to my own personal experience with CPS and how they violated my family's constitutional rights, and to also hopefully encourage a family out there who's going through something similar to keep their head up and keep fighting and keep pushing forward. The way we were done wasn't right. I've got the evidence where multiple people with CPS have told me that what was done wasn't right, should not have happened, but I've yet to receive any answers in regards to what they plan to do moving forward to ensure that other families don't have their rights violated like ours did. And that's really the only question that I have asked. But before I dive into that series and kind of start making those videos and digging deeper into those details, I did want to take a moment and just share a little bit about myself and how I kind of found myself on this path in life, advocating for not only my children but other children as well. Um, I was a little bit of a statistic. I had my first child my senior year of high school. He's in his 20s now, and he was later diagnosed with autism. Um, and that was a time when special ed laws, ADA laws, special education laws were not what they are today. So I spent a lot of time fighting for him to get the best education he could in the public school system. At that time, homeschooling really wasn't an option. I didn't really have a lot of resources for getting him the social interaction he needed. So public school was kind of it. And I realized early on in that journey that I was going to be the only person advocating for him. Providers, therapists, schools were going to take the easy way out. And that's kind of where my journey began, with advocating for kids who don't have a voice to fight for themselves. Either they'll never have that voice due to some type of disability or intellectual delay, or they're just not old enough to have that voice for themselves yet. So that's kind of what started my journey. Later in life, I had my other two children who um, are my world. My kids are my world. I sacrifice so many things to make sure they get a better life than what I got. I do everything I possibly can to make sure that I can afford to let them do a lot of things that I was never able to do when I was a kid, because I want them to have a better life than me. I want them to realize their worth early on, and I want them to grow into being a respectful person and comfortable in their own bodies with their own choices, their own careers later in life. So that's kind of where it started. Since then, I have felt myself battling a lot of times for not only my own children, but other children. When my son was diagnosed with autism, and I was fighting public schools a lot, advocating for him, getting him inclusion time instead of them taking the easy way out with CDC classes. I realized early on that a lot of children don't have a voice for themselves, and I fought a lot for not only my child but also others. You know, if you can provide something for my kids to be included in regular ed classes, then why aren't we offering it to other students? Why aren't we giving every child in the public school system the same opportunity to be the best that they can possibly be? And that's kind of where that started. Since then, I have found myself fighting local school systems over other issues. I may dive deeper into some of those in later series. My first series of videos will focus on um, my personal experience with CPS, the vast mishandling of that case, not necessarily the final ruling or the outcome. The outcome is what it is. I can't really change that. You just kind of live with it and make the best out of it every day. But the mishandling, the overlooking, the lack of care and compassion from CPS really made me feel like my child wasn't worth saving. My child's scars, because they weren't external, because that damage wasn't something that you could show with bruises or scratches or physical abuse, that just wasn't worth their time. Even though the allegations were there, even though there was some very strong evidence in that case, my experience with CPS, my experience with the family court system, just throwing all of that out. The perjury on the stand when it came to CPS testifying was another big concern. You know, if I sit on a stand and I lie, or I'm dishonest, or I omit information that results in me telling a lie, then I'm going to be held accountable. Why are they not held accountable when they do that in the family court system? I did research thoroughly a lot of laws where a lot of their funding comes from. I did a lot of Google searching, ran across a lot of similar stories to my own on social media. And a lot of the things that I found are just very concerning with the amount of power Children Protective Services holds. Um, the entire system in general, the funding from the judges over the case getting funding, the guardian ad litems, CPS in general, where their funding comes from, how they use it. It's the deeper I dig, the more corrupt I feel like the system is, and it needs an overhaul. Um, I spent the last year of my life trying to get answers, trying to advocate with um, federal and state lawmakers, leaders in CPS, both locally and on a state level. No one can really give me clear answers. They always tend to pass the buck. I have some of those emails. I may share those depending on whether or not I feel like it's going to help my goal in um, providing some kind of just encouragement to another family facing similar situations to continue that fight, to continue pushing forward, to continue asking questions. If it doesn't sound right, question it. Um, I'll share some information about how some of the behaviors from one of our caseworkers kind of threw up red flags with me, and I kind of started forcing text and email communication and refused to answer phone calls because I felt like the one time I had a phone conversation with him, it was very manipulative, bullying, not very professionally handled. The entire encounter with that specific caseworker was very just unprofessional. And then when I later started looking into that specific caseworker, I found that he was listed in other current litigation against CPS locally for similar allegations as to what I witnessed firsthand that occurred with my situation. So for me, advocating for kids, I didn't have a choice. I was a young mother. I got brushed off a lot. Because of that, no one really took me seriously. They felt like they could brush me off and I would go away. Um, or at least that's how I felt they were treating the situation. We went through 4 therapists before finally finding the one who would give us any hope for my son, because I wasn't willing to take, he's never going to amount to anything as an answer without at least trying therapy, without at least trying behavioral modification, speech therapy, and things like that. If you're not at least willing to try to give him a chance to succeed, I don't really have time to listen to someone tell me what he will never do. And that's where my journey began. I have a huge heart for kids, not just my own, but any child. That's a lot of times where I get a lot of pushback is a lot of school systems try to tell me I can't speak up for anyone else's kids. I can only speak up for my own. It's not true. Um, there are laws, codes, policies, guidelines governing who can speak up for a child, and it doesn't have to be a family member. It can be any community members, you know, be 90-year-old grandparent who was born and raised in your county, who sees something going on wrong at a public school, and they have the right to speak up, even if they don't have a kid, a grandkid, a great grandkid, a niece, a nephew, anybody in that school system. If you're a community member, you can absolutely speak up against the public school system, not just for your child, but any. That's a lot of times the pushback I get. If you ask questions, a lot of times your pushback is like, you don't have the right to ask those questions, but you do. And kids are our future. They're the people who are going to run this country. They are the people who are going to hold positions in law enforcement. They're your future president, your future attorneys, your future judges, your future teachers. What are we setting them up for in life if no one's ever willing to stand up and be their voice now when they don't have a voice of their own? What are we teaching them? I personally try to teach my kids to speak up, to stand up, to let someone know that what they're saying, what they're doing is hurting them. Do they always do it? No. Do they always know how to do it? No. That's why I'm here, is to help them, to be their voice when they can't be their own voice. They're still young. They don't have that voice yet. I'm a strong advocate for kids, even if they're not my own. If I'm advocating for my child against a public school system, I'm advocating for every child, because it's not just my kid. I don't want my kids to get special treatment anywhere in life because they have a parent who's willing to speak up and speak up publicly. Um, if you're going to treat my kid a certain way because you know that I will call you out, then you should be treating other kids like that too. If you can't do something in front of my kids, if you can't say something to them, if you can't do something to them because you're afraid I'll speak up about it, then don't do it to another kid, because they're going to come home and tell me. Um, so the focus of my first series will be on CPS and my journey with them, what I faced. My first video will be a rundown of just a brief run through of kind of what occurred. And then we'll do some runoff videos, diving deeper into each step of that, how I felt during that time, um, what I felt like they were treating me like, what I perceived as a manipulation and bullying and just an abusive authoritative figure from some of the people I encountered with CPS, the lack of answers that I got from the commissioner on the state level, the local CPS management. Yeah, they would tell me that what was done was wrong, but no one can really tell me what you plan on doing to prevent this from happening to future families. I guess they're not used to people asking that question. No, you can't change what was done in my situation. You can't change actions or words that were spoken or done during my case. But what you can change is how you treat families in the future, how you go about doing better to protect kids in the future. That's something that you can change. I'm not interested in your apologies. I'm not interested in someone saying that what was done was wrong. I'm interested in what's your action plan to change what was done to me for future families. And we'll go over all of that. We'll dive into that a little deeper and who all I've sent emails to. So far, the response I get from anyone outside of CPS when I ask for ways to advocate for change is hire an attorney, file a class action lawsuit, contact the Civil Rights Department. I don't want a lawsuit. I don't want money. Lawsuits. Yeah, I can file a lawsuit. I'm going to get slapped with a non disclosure and they're going to try to pay me off. They're going to settle out of court. I don't want their money. They should be using that money to educate and retrain some of these people to ensure that other families aren't being treated this way. It's disgusting. The way that me and my family was treated was disgusting. CPS had no right to do what they did. We're people, we have rights. Our children have rights. We as parents have rights. I wasn't even the alleged abuser, yet a lot of times I felt like I was the problem or they perceived me as the problem. At one point in time, they closed my case and a judge ordered it reopened because they saw evidence that was concerning in the case. And then CPS treated me like I was the problem, like I forced them to reopen that case. It was a judge's order. I didn't want a guardian ad litem. I didn't want CPS involvement. I hired a private attorney before I even called CPS because I wanted to avoid that whole situation. I didn't want anything to do with it. My research into the matter, it's kind of found that CPS is untouchable. Law enforcement, if they are running a case of child abuse, they're forced to contact CPS. If CPS is investigating a report of abuse, of neglect, of anything, endangerment, they never have to contact law enforcement. They don't have to contact the DA. They don't have to share anything with anybody. They investigate it themselves and determine whether or not that case is worthy. They're not they're not law enforcement. They're not attorneys. They're not child psychiatrists. They're caseworkers. Some of them have degrees in social work. Some of them have degrees in child psychology. Some of them have experience in those things. But at the end of the day, they are not the end all be all, and a lot of times they're given that power. And I feel like a lot of kids are being left in unsafe situations. Not necessarily physically abusive, but I feel like there's a lot of mental, emotional, psychological abuse that CPS doesn't care about. They don't want to fight that battle. They don't view that as a form of abuse. And I think it's ridiculous. We'll go over some of the things that I've endured over the last decade. Some of the things that I've tried to safeguard my child from, the things that CPS was aware of that happened recently that wasn't recent enough for them. The evidence of a lot of manipulation going on with my child, the evidence of gift showering, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, traumatizing behavior that can result in lifelong mental health issues that CPS just didn't care to even consider, even with the evidence laid out on a silver platter. Thankfully, I did hire an attorney before we even started that journey. Probably the best decision I made, regardless of the outcome of the case. But thanks to him, I have the proof that I sent all my evidence to several CPS caseworkers, to the commissioner of DHS for the state. They had the evidence, text, emails. I shared every bit of it, even though I knew that it was not going to do any good, even though my attorney knew that it probably wouldn't make a difference. At least I have that paper trail, and I do have a lot of that evidence. I hope one day I'm given the opportunity to hand that over to some lawmakers, to somebody who has the authority to get rid of some of these family court judges who just don't have any business doing what they do, because the one I dealt with was absolutely disgusting. He was in a bad mood from the very first time I saw him walk into the courtroom that morning. He forced all of his hearings that day to be closed, court cases. No one was allowed in the courtroom while he was hearing these cases, which sent up all kinds of red flags anyway. The way that he brushed me off, the way that he just disregarded me, the way that he spoke to me, it really just kind of ran all over me. It wasn't right. That's no one in that courtroom, not even the judge, had the child's best interest in mind. I feel like I was the only person in that courtroom who truly cared about the best interest of the child at the end of it. It ended up being a very hostile, disgusting environment, and it should have never happened. The fact that he had closed door sessions that day was concerning enough. Now I understand why, because who's there to witness this behavior? Who's there to police it? Who's there to do anything about it? So, yes, I'm a strong advocate for kids, not just my own, but any child. I volunteer a lot of my personal time to spend time with my kids. I volunteer at the schools. I do field trips. I do church activities. I do extracurricular activities. I coach or help coach some sports that they play. I will always take every opportunity I can to spend time with my kids, to be there for them, to cheer them on, to make sure they see my face in the crowd, to make sure they hear my voice cheering them on. I will always be their biggest fan. So, although I will try to get these videos out in a timely manner, I will try to do them semi regular. There may be some longer breaks in between these videos because my kids come first. Spending time with them, making memories with them that they will have for the rest of their life after I'm dead and gone. That will always be my top priority, being there to cheer them on. So if it's a busy season, if we have a lot of extracurricular activities going on, ball games, events, camps, I may slack off a little bit on videos. Once again, I would like to say I would apologize, but I can't really apologize for something that I don't have any remorse for. My kids come first. You know, sharing these videos, sharing my story, sharing my experience, sharing some of the tools I use to reach out to people who I felt like might be able to help me make a difference. Um, I hope that inspires someone to keep pushing forward. I hope that inspires more people to let their voice be heard, to stand up and ask those questions, to be their child's voice, to reach out, to research, to dive deep into those laws, um, and educate themselves on what their rights are, because no parent deserves to ever go through what we went through. And I know for me, I came out a lot better at the end. I didn't lose my kids. I never lost any time with my children. I never had any fears that I was going to lose them. I wasn't the alleged abuser. I was should have been regarded as the safe parent at that time. Not saying the other party isn't a safe parent or there's anything wrong with them. But, the allegations were against them. Yet I was treated like the problem here. And that just doesn't sit well with me. So there it is. That's a little bit about me, a little bit about why I am so, I feel so compelled to be an advocate for kids, not only my own, but all children. You know, we're our children's voices. Sometimes we're voices for children that are not ours. We don't know what other people are going through. We don't know what their life journey is, what battles they're fighting right now. Maybe it's a parent that wants to be a voice, but there's so many other things going on in life that just can't be that voice right now. I'll be that voice when I can. I will stand up. I will question that. I've spoke out at board meetings. I've emailed federal and state lawmakers, elected officials. I've gotten a lot of help from a lot of them. I've, emailed local school boards, commissioners, the mayor's office himself, advocating for many situations in the last 20 something years. Um, I won't stop. I will always advocate for my children. One day I hope I'm advocating for my grandchildren, but I will also advocate for every other child in that situation that I'm aware of, because every child deserves a fair chance at life. They deserve to be loved. They deserve to be in a loving home. They deserve to have every opportunity given to them to succeed in life, to obtain an education, to do better than how they were raised for themselves, Um, I've fought hard to get where I'm at. I've overcome a lot in my life. I don't know that I'll ever share that. It's not really important in regards to my CPS journey. Maybe one day I'll do a series on that. Who knows? Um, but, I'll always be an advocate, and I encourage everyone to ask those questions to be an advocate. I hope that my videos and my journey with CPS and what my family went through inspires someone out there going through something similar, or just someone out there who wants to advocate for better, to stand up and make your voice heard, to do your research, to look up anything that I reference, to read it for yourself, to gain your own knowledge, your own understanding. Don't take my word for it. Be able to stand up, be able to speak for yourself, be able to have that clear in your mind so that you can answer those questions. Be there, even if it's not your own kids. If you're advocating for others, advocate for them. Advocate for them. Teach children to gain their own voice, to be able to stand up for themselves later in life. Teach them the proper chain of command to go through, because one day they're going to need it. If they're going to advocate for themselves, if they're going to advocate for their children, for the future generations, they need someone to be that role model. If that's all I get from this video, if I just reach one person out there struggling in a situation similar to ours and give them enough encouragement to keep moving forward, that'll be a success for me. If there's 10 people who ever watch my videos and one person gets a little bit of encouragement to keep pushing forward from that, to me, that's a success. It's not about the number of people who watch these. It's not about the number of people I reach. It's about reaching someone who is ready to give up, just like I was several times in this journey, ready to give up, ready to stop fighting because they don't know where else to go. If I inspire that one person to keep pushing forward, if I can share that one law, that one code, that one guideline, that one anything, if I can point them to that one thing that they need somewhere in federal codes, in their state codes, then I hope that's a success for me. I hope that they get that information. I hope they go look it up. I hope they educate themselves and advocate for themselves and ask those questions and let their voices be heard. I hope they understand that CPS will try to silence you because they fear what you will tell others. They fear what you will say, what you will bring to light. If they're pushing to silence you, they're probably in the wrong. And I hope that I can inspire someone out there to keep pushing forward, to bring that to light, to share your story. Share your story. Even if you did wrong and it's about a journey of doing better and jumping through their hoops and doing everything they ask to try to get your kids back and still being done wrong, share that story, because that's a success in itself. Doing better for your children is always a success. So if I reach that one person out there, if I'm able to give just a little bit of encouragement for them to keep pushing forward, this journey that I'm on now, this new journey with YouTube videos, with sharing my story publicly, will be 100% worth it, because it will make a difference in at least one person's life. So that's a little bit about me, why I feel so strongly about advocating for kids. We'll get into that more in depth, I'm sure, as I share some of my stories and my videos on my journey with CPS. Um, it's my story. You can comment if you want. I don't know that, negative comments will do anything to me. Um, I'm a pretty firm believer in, some people will love me, some people will hate me. That's your problem, not mine. If you don't like my content, you don't like what I have to say, you don't like the story I'm sharing, you can scroll on through. It's my story. You're not going to change my perspective on my story, on my life events, on how I felt in that moment. You're more than welcome to share your comments. Doesn't mean that I will respond to them, address them, or even care about them. Life's too short. I'll be spending time with my kids and enjoying every moment of it. But this is my story, and I hope it inspires someone. I hope to start those videos in the next several weeks. We'll see where this journey leads me. Bye.